What's up, guys? It's Coach Grant with First Down Training, and today we're going to be talking about why this route didn't work. So there's going to be a new series that we're going to be doing on this channel. We're going to be talking about just why routes didn't work, some of the things that wide receivers could do a little bit better, and then we're going to show you an example of the exact same route and how that route was executed and why that route specifically worked, okay? So I hope this video gives you guys some value. I know you guys have been asking for this, so I think this will help you guys out a lot. Today we're going to be taking a look at a comeback route. So we're going to be looking at this comeback route off of like kind of a stutter stem and what you can do to get this DB to turn his hips and bail out of there. But also, fellas, if you guys want our ultimate wide receiver package, okay, so you get our wide receiver gym training program for a full month and our wide receiver technique Bible with all things wide receiver at a discounted price. Check out that very first link in the description. Everything that a wide receiver needs to improve their route running, hands, IQ, blocking, and our specific gym program so you can be a little bit more explosive, faster, stronger, and get a little bit bigger. Very first link in the description. Hope we get you guys on that. Let's get started with this video, okay? So now we're going to be looking at this stutter comeback right here. Denzel Ward plays this thing perfectly and knocks this thing out. Now, again, we say it all the time on this channel. It's not about what the DB does right. It's about what we do wrong as a wide receiver, right? So if I'm coming out of here and I give these indicators on my routes, I do something on this route where I'm, like I screw up the timing at the top of the break, I screw up the timing with the quarterback, that gives this DB more time to react because he's playing a guessing game 24/7. So when we run, you see how he gives this little stutter. This DB, Ward kind of drops his hips, slows down. That's a good job. So off of that stutter, what we got to make sure that we do is that we have a ton of explosion and we push up vertical, right? I don't want to be here. This receiver kind of chops his strides a little bit. And so when I'm chopping my strides up into a break off of that stutter or going into like a 45 break, like a curl comeback, maybe you're breaking off on a 90, like a dig or a speed out, those choppy steps allow this DB to slow down. And he can sense that speed change. He could sense the speed change at the top of the break and be able to make a play on this thing. So now the easy thing to say is like, oh, he took too many steps at the top of the break, right? Now, I wouldn't say that steps should be your main concern. You should be more concerned with eliminating time at the top of the break, right? You see a lot of receiver coaches are like, oh, well, you took too many steps. It's like, well, listen, I'd rather take 5 steps and sell vertical and drop violently than slow myself down, pop my chest up, give a huge indicator and get out. There's a lot of people think that they get out of these breaks in 2 steps. That's not possible on a 45-degree angle break, right? You can't do it. It's literally not going to happen. You're not going to be able to make a clean break with you trying to turn out of there in 2 steps. It takes a long time to develop that skill to be able to get out of anything in 2 steps, right? So I'm not saying, I shouldn't say it's impossible, but for guys who maybe don't have that, like just, you're not able to just turn your feet like that on a dime and sell vertical and drop right away. And a lot of people think they are, but you're really not. You really got to focus on selling vertical and creating energy at the top of the break before you even worry about steps. If your stem is off and you're giving indicators and you're slowing yourself down and you're chopping your feet, you could take 1 step at the top of the break and you're not going to get out. The DB will beat you every single time because you're slow. You got to be fast. You got to sell vertical. You got to get him to turn his hips and then be able to drop it off, right? So you see how this receiver, he goes inside foot right here. So how many steps does he take, right? So let's talk about steps. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and he's out of there, right? So 5 steps at the top of the break. That's not horrible. That I've seen worse. You see guys take like 7, 8, 9 steps, but the problem with it, and you can only tell when you play full speed, these steps don't create energy because that energy turns into explosion and there's no violent drop. He kind of just sinks his hips, right? So let's watch the thing again. He sinks his hips and you see how he's kind of beating the drum. That gives Ward all day. A good DB who's trained properly and a good DB who understands how they have to get out of a route can come back downhill on anything like this if we give him an indicator. That's why beating the drum is bad. If you have a coach who tells you to beat the drum, he doesn't want to take the time to teach you how to snap down. He's just rushing you through it. He's just trying to get you through drill work so you're able to sweat. You want to make sure that your hands are moving, but you don't want to beat the drum and take too many steps. This is a perfect example of that, right? I come down here and you sink your hips and you don't snap your hips. That doesn't create any energy. You're not exploding out of the break and you're not turning this corner as fast as you can. So it's not about his steps. His steps were too choppy. It wasn't about the amount of steps. He took too much time right here. That's the issue. There was no violent drop, so there was no explosion, so he couldn't turn that explosion into acceleration. And those steps were way too choppy, not creating energy, which gave this DB time to react on this thing and gave him time to drive on the ball. Okay, so now let's watch the thing full speed. Then we're going to take a look at the good example right now so you guys can learn from it. So you see how he comes here, gives a little stutter, and then he just kind of sinks into it, right? Sinks into it, and that takes just a little bit too much time. Be concerned with cutting out time at the top of the break. Don't worry about steps. When you get to that point where you could could run full speed and you have that violent drop, then you could start playing around with steps. Then you could be like, okay, how can I make this more efficient? How can I get out of it? But the number one thing is you got to sell vertical. Number two thing is you got to create energy with your hips, and that energy turns into acceleration, which is number three. You shouldn't be, your first day working on this stuff, or if you're still kind of a beginner, you still need to improve your routes. If you feel like you're not a good route runner, you should not be worrying about steps. You need to be worrying about dropping on a dime. You need to be worrying about selling vertical, because that's what all great route runners do. That happens before the steps get cut out. If you guys are so worried about steps, you're not going to be selling vertical. So don't get caught up in steps. I'm not saying try to run the perfect route. I'm saying be concerned with selling vertical, getting the DB to turn his hips, and having a violent change of direction with no indicators, because that's ultimately what gets you more separation. I've seen guys who take 5 steps, they're 10 times faster than a guy who takes 3, because the guy who takes 3 slows down, raises his chest up, opens up his hips. So don't get concerned with steps. Get concerned with dropping your hips violently and creating energy. So now let's watch this route from Dez Bryant. So this is a better example of a little stutter, and you see how violent he is with that drop and how much that DB is able to shoot by. Now, obviously, this DB isn't Denzel Ward. Denzel Ward is one of the best defensive backs in the league, obviously. However, though, this still, again, same principles apply. DBs work on a lot of the same things we do. They're working on eliminating time at the top of the break. They're working on reading tempo. They're working on reading hips, that drop, getting out of breaks fast, right? So the first thing, what did we talk about with the other route? When we gave that stutter, what did we need off of that stutter? We needed to be full speed, and we needed to actually run. We needed to actually push vertical to get this DB to run with me, and I don't want to chop my feet up into the break. So you see how he gives this stutter, and Dez Bryant's actually running. He gives a little peek back technique too. That little peek back also helps getting this DB to turn his hips. Other receiver didn't do that. However, that's not an essential. That's not something that you need to do every single time you run a comeback. You can keep your head down. You can still sell vertical without looking back for the ball. So when he goes here, you see how when he drops his hips, there's actually a violent drop to it. Like he's actually snapping down and actually dropping his weight aggressively, because that's what slows him down. It's not a cruise into it. He's not slowing down. He's not beating the drum. He's dropping his weight. He's snapping right in stride. His stride length doesn't change. He just snaps right here. Chin goes to his knee. Explosive position, because there's no indicator on that. There's not a slow drop of his hips. And let's count his steps. So he goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But you see, he takes 5 steps at the top of the break, but this DB's shooting way by because it wasn't slow. Both guys took 5 steps. Both guys took 5 steps on each one of these comebacks, but the only difference was that Dez had a violent drop of his hips and the other receiver slowed down with his hips. And when you slow down and you cruise into a break, you beat the drum, you're not creating any explosion and you're not able to drive out of this thing. But when you're violent with your hips, you're creating explosion. Doesn't give this DB time to stop, because you're stopping on a dime and he obviously is going off you. He's reacting off of you. So when you do something quick, obviously it's harder for him to react. Think of it like boxing. When a guy's throwing a jab and he's really snapping that jab off, it's harder to get out of the way. But if he's throwing a slow jab, it's a lot easier to get out of the way. Same idea right here. It's all reaction for this DB. That's why DB's so hard to play. So I drop down, violent with my hips. You see how he doesn't beat the drum. He just kind of runs out of there with his arms and he accelerates back to the ball. And you see the separation he's able to get. That all comes from top of the route. Be concerned with eliminating time. Be concerned with selling vertical as fast as you can, running as hard as you can, no indicators on the route, give a little peek back, or you keep your head down, but your body should be selling fade, and you drop violently to eliminate time spent at the top of the break. Let's watch this thing again, full speed one more time. So Dez Bryant comes off here. Great job giving this little stutter, pushing vertical off of the stutter, being violent with those hips, and then coming back to that ball. All right, guys, I really want to thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. If you guys have any questions at all, please leave those in the comments below. I'll get back to you as soon as possible. And also, fellas, again, ultimate wide receiver training package. Get it at a discounted price today. Gym training program already built into the program, and our wide receiver technique manual, all things wide receiver that you need to know in a PDF file for you. You get access to both of those things right away. So hope we get you guys on that soon. Again, leave any questions in the comments if you have any. I'll see you guys next time.